You are listening to Revenue Insights. Today, I'm joined by Paulo Veloso, Chief Revenue Officer at Digibee. Paulo has over 15 years of experience in the telecom and technology industry. He's passionate about delivering value to customers and solving their complex integration challenges. Paulo, it's a pleasure. Welcome.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
No problem at all. For folks that are listening that maybe haven't come across you before, maybe they have heard about Digibee, but they don't know who the revenue leader is behind it. Can you tell us a little bit more about your story and how you got to where you are today?
Sure. So I'm actually born in Brazil. Now I'm living in Miami, Florida. I've been in the tech industry for my whole life, right? So I'm a engineer by heart and a sales guy by day, and that's where I've been doing my whole entire career. So coming from the technical side, I do really like it and have my passion on technology. So working in variety of segments, coming from security to pure IT infrastructure, so networking and telecom. So I kind of have a little taste for everywhere. But really, my passion was into having the revenue team and leading teams to successful sales. So I most of my career I spent it in the Latin American market, coming from Brazil. I've been coming to US about 10 years ago. So I've been dealing with the US market 10 years ago, coming from very successful deploying large companies into that territory and been asked to come into larger territory with more revenue associated with that to help them grow and scale here as well, applying some of the rules we learned over there. So that's what I've been doing since, and super happy, hopefully successful career doing that so far. So I appreciate the question.
So I'm very curious to begin then. Just
Yeah.
to pick on something that you've mentioned there, what are some of the things that you learned over in Latin America that you've brought over and applied to North America?
Everybody asks me that question, so I'll get to curiosity. So one thing that's very clear to me, Latin American market's very hard because it's very budget constrained, right? So you really got to focus on the question of what's in there for me type of question. So it's really related to results and outcomes. And that's a lot of what I learned coming from that market, right? So you got to be a little bit more scrappy on getting things done. And you really got to focus on the results than just about the tech. The tech is important. If you have a great product, you're going to sell, but also really bringing that, I can do more with less ability into the market. It proved to be very right. Because a lot of time when we sell, we think that, hey, this is a good feature. This is a good product. Let's sell. So, no, let's stop. What's in there for the customer, right? So what they're going to get out of this. And it's not just good for me as a seller, but also good as for the customer so they can help me defend. So building champions with that strategy, it proved to be very, very aligned with the US market compared to Latin, because we already use that strategy over there. And make it personal, right? So everybody buy for three things. Everybody for a budget, everybody buy for their feeling and emotions about buying that, and everybody buy for a pain. They already experienced that. So finding those three and building champions with that question in mind, which is what's in there for me, it's something that we brought over. And it's very simple to say, it's hard to apply, right? So building my career on top of it helped me, with guiding my teams toward this more often than usual. So
Nice.
that was something that, it worked.
It's interesting because as you describe it, I'm like, hang on, that's what I've been talking to folks about a lot over the last 6 to 12 months, because it's gone from kind of growth at all costs, and it's very much like feature-led selling, and now it feels like we're kind of going almost back in time a little bit. Certainly from I'm based in EMEA, and going back to value-led selling, and it sounds like it's very similar. Hearing you talk about it, it's now it's almost common sense. But I suppose when you were bringing that over, it's like, hang on, everyone's just gone into feature-led selling here. There's a real opportunity.
I think it's more than that, Lee. I think it's where people realize that companies have so many tools, and it's rarely in the market that's only one player, or features and functions. With AI and larger development teams and easier like agile cycles of product development, very concise now into the market, you're not going to see the product that like superior to your point that the feature is going to sell it, right? So you don't see that anymore in the market so often. You still have some unicorns over there, but it's not what's common base. So really selling towards the outcomes for a customer, it really brings you more than just the value selling, but the outcome selling. It's because, okay, this is my agreement with you. This is why I agree with you. It's our success together. And this is what you're going to get out of this. And it's going to cost you this, and it's going to take you this time to get there. And that's the reason you see the rise of customer success teams being more and more inside software companies, because they understand if they go that path, it's really, really important for them to keep growing. SaaS and everybody in the industry now talk about consumption based, right? So you buy cloud, consumption based, but you got to remember that you're going to help your customer adopt. So you're going to help them achieve that outcome. So that's the reason the rise of consumption based pricing and also the rise of customer success teams driving that adoption and consumption, right? So it's a flip on the market to say, okay, here in Digibee, for example, we don't say, oh, we sold to the customer. No, we made their first commitment. We got to keep going next, to say, okay, if you like it, you're going to keep growing with us. That's the only way we look at the market. So that's a different mentality of what we're talking about. Okay, let's value the base sale. From the past, it's good. I think it was the V1 of the way we were seeing right now, which is outcome-based selling with a lot of consumption pricing and a customer success team a little bit more empowered for that journey.
It's such a fascinating point, and it almost what I'm intrigued by is, I guess I can imagine it from a sales perspective, and what I'm very curious by is, how does that apply then when we're talking about outcome based selling? How does that then cover the entire customer journey? So once as you kind of mentioned, there's that first step, here's the outcome that we are going to help you to deliver. What does it then look like after that customer comes in and goes all the way, until they're up for renewal or whatever it might be?
So we got to look at this in a different way. The customer journey, that's what I call the first commitment, right? Which is, it's our commitment to the customer in terms of the outcome we expect together of this project is this, right? And if that outcome is successful, what's next? And that requires two things. First, require a very well done discovery phase on the customer journey. So you really got to take time to know and get to know the customer pain points, right? So that's the first thing on that approach. The second point on that approach is, you got to understand that the sale or the contract signature is only this first step of the journey. It's not the last step, right? So that's the reason we call the first commitment, because I commit to this portion of my pain, but if this is successful, I can do this, and that. So that's where we look at the sale differently now. And even it will require different type of people, because you got to understand that on your sales side, you got to empower the customer success team as well to be that next phase on this customer journey. When before, where everybody's just the sales guy. Upsell is way more strong, or even renewals, coming from the very empowered customer success team. If you don't do that, you're going to have issues with the renew, churns, downsells, and etc. Right? So that's the reason here at Digibee, for example, we built a very, very strong customer journey that starts all the way from marketing, BDR, sourcing, all up to customer success, renew, and upsells. So it's not a stopgap inside of the sale, the contract signature, but it keeps moving. I only consider that revenue when we actually do the first contract renew. Because before that, it's just the first commitment. We can still fail and not get the customer business, right? So you got to approach it in a different way.
I love that. And I feel like we're probably going to refer back to that as we continue to talk. Let me bring us back and kind of attack this from maybe a high level. So we're recording this in kind of early March at this point. I'm curious for the Digibee team, like what are your objectives for this year? Like, and I don't necessarily need specifics, but overarching, what are you trying to achieve this year?
So Digibee, it's a Brazilian startup that is trying to get into the US market, right? Very successful product. It goes against large incumbents like Software AG, MuleSoft, and others, right? Very brand names into the industry. So disruption that it brought to one specific market, it really gets that simplicity of the platform and not complicate things. So it was extremely successful in Brazil, number one used, right, by far, even against big brands, right? When it comes to a different market, you need to understand about the value. And we know our value for one market. We're learning the second value for the US market. Very successful, right? And the customers understand that having a platform like Digibee could get them outcomes like, okay, I can save my time in my ERP migration. I can really decouple service and make it easier on digitalization. Everybody talks about digital transformation, but to be honest, it's an ongoing thing. You're always going to be digital transforming your business for the best and next, right? So for me, what brought me to Digibee was the platform built specifically in a way that can help with that. So, of course, in Brazil, it's easier for us to go and say, okay, you're the market leader. Everybody wants to buy from you and keep buying. Here is everybody gets to know you. So one of my biggest goals is to make sure when we have the right team, get this team productive in a way that it's a repeatable process, right? In Brazil, we get that square up. So we're going to make sure that in the new markets that we enter, US is one, EMEA next, right? But we get that repeatable, predictable, scalable process. And for me, selling, it's not a science, right? Selling is actually a really, really defined process that can be repeatable, predictable, and scalable in a point that you got to fail 100 times and then you got to get it right. And then when you get it right, you execute that 1,000 times, right? But you got to constant getting right. And that's what, for me, is the hardest on getting to the new market the right way. Because it's easy to buy a business and say, okay, I'm spending tons in marketing, I'm getting a lot of leads. It's not scalable, right, for a startup. The same way, even when I get and I work in large companies before and very big organizations, it's still not scalable because then your CAC is high, then you don't have a prediction, then your churn is starting to be very high as well. So if you lay that foundation in the right way, you're always going to grow organically. You're always going to go with a lower CAC, and you're always going to have a better process into the market. So for me, my biggest objective this year is to build that for new markets that we're going to enter, right? US being one, and others we're doing Latin America. We're good in some part of the year in EMEA, right? So that's what is my biggest objective this year. We have the right team for it. It's just about figure out the market itself and move on. And we're being successful. Like less than 3 months out of doing this, we're seeing big logos already. We're seeing like our shorter sales cycles, and even displacing the big brands most of the time. Right?
Amazing. There's probably a few ways that I'd love to go from here, but I'm curious, actually, based on the last point that you made, and I'm gonna hazard a guess that achieving that repeatable, scalable process probably isn't just, we started this 3 months ago. I'm sure it's going back like much further. So perhaps over the last 12 months, let's say, in terms of, um, on the journey towards, that's the dream, on the journey towards like a repeatable, scalable model, what initiative are you most proud of that you found success from? Because you alluded to failing 100 times, and maybe we don't need to dig into like the 100 failures, but I'd love to know what it was when you finally struck gold. It's like, yes, like this is actually working. Let's do more of this.
So for me, it takes about three things. The first is the right team, right? The right profile of people that you surround you with that understand that's a mission. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Everybody says that, but it's hard to lead by, right? So the right team is really, really important, right? Because especially on the stage that Digibee is in the market, right? The second is the right product fit. So understanding what's the right position, what's the right message, what's the right use case, what's the customer is using you for, and it's been successful, right? Listen from your customers, right? So this second pillar, which is a customer pillar, is very important. Like I got here in September-ish, right? With that challenge. The first thing I did is I sat down with 100 customers. That was my first priority. I get the 50 top ones and I get the 50 most problematic ones. We all have them, right? And I listened from them and I said, what's common problems and what's common successes that we have? Second, on that journey is, okay, I have some assumptions from it. Let's test it. Let's ask back those customers, hey, can you take a look at this? So partnership with them. So first pillar is people. The second pillar is listen to your customers. And the third pillar is actually have a process that's going to enable those two first to work, right? Which means you need to have a better sales process. It cannot take a week for a quote to get out. You cannot have a complicated licensing methodology that nobody's understands beside your enablement team, right? So you need to have a very concise way of doing business, right? So those three are the pillars to take us to, yes, we're going to fail 100 times, but with this three thing work very well, then you find that need on the haystack and then you pursue that. And and it's a constant thing, right? It doesn't stop when you find one. You got to keep going. You got to find more because then you get more customers. You got to talk more, you listen more, you learn more, and you apply that learning. That's the reason one of the first things that I did is I hired a sales enablement team, right? Because enablement is very important. Information is important, right? So where you get to a point where everybody has the same message, everybody's talking the same thing, everybody's pushing the same thing. So it's really important for making it consistent, right? So those are the stats or the three pillars. I would say it's important for us to build that. So that's what I'm very proud of. We built in this short period of time that I'm here is we got a successful market. We're entering successfully in another one, and it being super welcomed by customers because we listen, and it's really rarely on a sales team that you say, I just want to sell. It doesn't matter. Because if you're selling with the wrong CAC, you're selling to the wrong ICP, you don't grow. Sometimes it's okay to say no to something. We got to learn to say no. This is not the right customer for me. Right? I'm not going to provide him with a successful path, right? This is the wrong use case. It's going to churn in less than a year, right? So let's not do it, right? Let's not do it. And that's what it's hard to build. But I think that I felt very good that we built that. It's a process, but I can tell you by now that everybody in the company and my revenue team, it looks towards one goal and look towards one north, because it can get it can get like complicated when you have multiple geographies as a startup, right? So we finally get to everyone looking at North in FY24, and it's been super rewarding.
And let's talk about building that team. We were touching on it before we hit the record button today, and I love talking about building high performance teams a lot on this podcast. And how did you go about building that team?
So building teams is all about the goal, right? So you can take high performers that's performing one type of company. Doesn't mean they're going to perform in another type of company, right? I'll give you an example, right? I worked for Splunk in my recent past. Very large organization, right? Ridiculous amount of code. I had probably from the rep to my level about 10 people in the middle. And the thing was, to make a high performer there, it's a different strategy than made a high performer here at Digibee, right? So you got to understand, okay, in each market, what works for that market, right? What is that market needs that is important for them, and that you can enable that profile of seller to be successful. For example, Northeast, it's all about finances. So it's larger deals. It's more density market, right? So you got to make sure that you know someone that can speak that language, right? But know someone that, for example, especially on the stage that we are a startup, it's a very like multiple hats type of person. It's a person that can understand the territory and get that nailed down. And it's a person that understands that hunting, it's not just about taking the inbound. It's actually going to be, any rep's going to do BDR work, right? Any rep's going to do like concise on presentations and messaging. Any rep's going to go into events. Doesn't matter if it's good or bad, but they're going to go, right? So they're going to do training. So it really gets a specific profiles for each stage of the company and each stage of territory. I cannot hire, for example, a guy that has one account at Digibee, right? Even though he can sell millions in one account, he's not going to test my potential into the market doing that. He's probably going to sell one deal a year, but that's not what we need right now. We need a guy that's going to sell 12 contracts, 15 contracts, even the smaller ones, and they're going to understand what's working in that territory. And then we can grow into having farmers. We can grow into having large account deals. But I cannot build that in a specific moment. So people think a high performer is just because he made a tremendous amount of quota in one company, he's going to do it again in another. It's not. It's about the environment. It's about the strategy. It's about the goal that the company overall has, right? And also, it's a foundation for building high performers. No company that is a stage of Digibee is going to have extremely high performers for one reason. There's a lot in the culture perspective to build towards high performers, right? Especially in smaller companies. So you got to understand that it's a process, it's a culture change, and it's a company that looks at sale as the ending goal. And in a sales enablement company, I just say, okay, everybody's important about the customer. And changing that mentality sometimes is hard. So at Digibee, we're extremely fortunate that most of the founders come from the sales side, comes from the business side. So it was embedded on the DNA. We just needed to amplify it, right? So I have a very traditional say, but it takes the right profile of people, the right profile of company to make that person successful. So I don't take just a rep that's making 200 of their 300% of the quota and bring it in. It's going to make that person successful. I need to have a foundation for it. I need to have a culture for it. And I need to have everyone looking in the same direction first. And then people are going to get high performers, right? So that's how we build the right team. And content is important. Enablement tools, like high performers need a whole environment for working. One person is not high performance. Teams are high performance teams, right? So that environment needs to be built. And startups, sometimes it's hard because too diverse, but then you need to, okay, I want a high performer. Let's make 6 high performers. 3 of them are going to be great. 3 of them are going to be average, right? But then you keep growing. So it's about the people. It's about the profile. It's about the mission. It's not about just bringing a person that's working somewhere, that hiring that person. That's going to fail.
I really like your perspective on, understanding what the requirements are first before bringing in that person, right? It's a bit like in football or soccer, as you would call it. And, you're bringing in superstars who, perhaps into, let's say, for example, into a team that already has a number of those players. And actually what you find is they end up encroaching on the same space as each other, and actually it ends up diminishing the impact of both of them, as opposed to getting two superstar players, right? So what would you say are the kind of attributes that you look for typically in a high performer? I know that it could, would be getting quite specific based on region and role, but overarching, and you kind of mentioned it there from a cultural perspective, are there overarching attributes that you're looking for in reps that are with a degree of confidence going to succeed?
So high performers, they have some commonalities, right? First, they're extremely well organized, right? So they know what they need to do. They plan for it. They just don't run around. They know what they got to do. Second is their focus. Focus on a mission, right? So, hey, my mission is this, how I'm getting there, right? Third is they ask and they know they work as a team. No lone wolves are successful in any business, right? They can make one sale good, but they're not going to be consistent successful, right? The fourth is they spend their time knowing their customers. It's not a transaction. They know they can get more revenue out of their customer, so they're going to spend time on relationship. And the fifth is they're always hunting, which means something can fall into the forecast. They need to cover for it. So it's always on. It never stops. So those 5 things that make high performers. So it's really rarely that you find people that, like sellers, that don't know a little bit about the technology. There's no interest about understanding how to present that properly. There's no interest on learning. So high performers, they learn quick and they adopt quick, because if they don't do that, they know they're not going to be relevant. So going with golf with everybody and saying that this relationship is not, people are less and less buying from this, more and more buying from, what? Let you talk to this other customer about what they achieve with me. And sales is personal, especially large contracts. They're personal, both sides, right? That's the reason I'm telling you about the outcome selling versus value selling. Value, a lot of people provide value. What people can provide me the outcome that I need. And that's what it was very clear to me with very diverse team that I had in my whole career, that those 5 things is important. Learning, planning, organization, right? Really take time to know your customers. I can give you a quick story about this. Like I had on my team before a person, super high performer, and he had one account. And everybody was super worried I was worried about him before knowing him. And he's like, Paulo, I don't work Friday after. I'm going to golf every Friday. And I'm like, what? I said, yeah, I'm going to golf every Friday. But the rest of the week, I'm going to do 200% of my quota this year. I'm like, dude, you have the largest bank. You're not going to double your contract every year. It's like, watch me, right? And he did. And every time I call him after 12 on Friday, he's like, I'm not picking up. I told you I'm golfing, right? But he was focused. He strategically knew what he needed to achieve. He knew the customer better than anyone, right? And when people think that the most important person in a meeting is the VP, the CRO, it's not. If the AE is not the most important person in that meeting, something's wrong, especially in enterprise software sales, right? Because the AE is the guy that the CEO called. They don't call the CRO. They negotiate with the CRO. They badge bump, right, the CRO in terms of power conflict. But that's not the most important person in the meeting. I've been to many, many meetings it was a handshake, and the job is actually done by the AE later, right? Building, constructing the deal, making sure that everything was right. And then, of course, there's that shake hand commitment between companies that's happened. But the most important person on a meeting needs to be that high performer. And if it's not that, then it's not the right high performer. And you can feel it as a leader for some time. You get into a meeting and you know more than the AE, that guy is not going to do it. And then you got to intervene and get the deal done. But so that's examples of it's about the person, not about the CRO, not about a badge, not about a position. It's about, okay, that CIO believes in that AE, and I'm here just as an institutional representative to say we support the guy to do this deal.
It's such a great story, and I know will resonate with pretty much everyone listening to this. I think everyone knows a high performer quite like that. Sometimes the entire business's revenue number relies on that individual. So I have to ask, because my perspective of individuals like that, they're a nightmare to get to follow your sales process. You never really know what it is that they're doing. We kind of have an idea that they're more strategic, and they've always got these relationships, and they're off golfing with the CIOs, on a Friday. How do you approach replicating that individual?
It's very hard because it's personal, right? You gotta be good at identifying it and enabling, right? That's the reason I'm telling this individual that I tell this story. He's organized. So I'll contraire to what you think. His sales force is spotless. Spotless. His account planning was updated every week because he took that as his notes, right? So when they are organized, that's what I tell it's important. High performers that are not organized, they're not going to keep it. They can get lucky 1 year, and the next year they're down. So consistent high performance require discipline, but also require focus, but also require a type of person that's hard to replicate. It's impossible. You can enable people to do that, but then they need to decide on their own that I want to be a high performer. You can teach them. They can learn, but are they become? It depends on each individual. That's the reason I'm telling you, high performers are a process. And when somebody really gets it, he will be high performer. Curiosity is important. Follow the process, absolutely. You know why? It takes the same amount of time to do the right and wrong thing. Any rep can decide to wake up Monday morning and just beach the forecast call or say, I'm going to customer and he's golfing or he's doing whatever. But if you say, you know what? I want to make money. I want to be the top one, and put your mind to it. I don't care if you're golfing every Friday afternoon, because I know micromanaging never put anyone anywhere. That's the reason I say high performance is a culture, not just an individual. Because I don't care if all my reps are golfing every Friday, but their pipeline needs to be great, their forecast needs to be spotless, and everything is working towards. I'd love to have 10 high performers on a team and say, okay, you can golf every Friday. I'll pay for your golfing if you're doing that. Because then it means the business is blooming, right? but it's not the case. Then you need to create processes to do that. But for me, it's the personal thing, and everybody needs to decide about it. It's not a replicable feature in a person, right? It's something you can teach, it's something you can enable, but it's not. And then when me as a leader, I find one, I hire, right? That's the reason my interviews with people is completely different. Like whenever it gets to me, I don't care if it's a good seller, I don't care if you know the territory. People before me already vouch for it. When it gets to me, it's about, can that person be my A+ player? Tell me more about how you work your week. Tell me one successful thing and one failure thing you did last week, right? Tell me something about you that you didn't tell anyone yet. What you want to achieve in 5 years. How much money you want to make this year. How are you going to get there? How you think you can get there here? Those are the questions I ask in the interview. I don't care what's a good seller. He knows how to sell software. He probably does. He's being vouched by a TA, first line manager, second line manager, peer, whatever. I'm not going to ask the same question. I don't care.
I love that. And there's one final question that I'm curious about, because as we talk, I'm like, man, it sounds like Paulo and the Digibee team really like have it down. So on that journey to repeatable and scalable growth this year and beyond, what's the biggest challenge that you've got right now that you're trying to overcome?
People do not take the failures as definitive.
Expand.
Yeah, it's not that. Failure is part of the process of growth, right? It's just about what you do with it. And again, it's hard to say, you know what I mean? But I've been many, many times. I'm a builder. Right? It's part of my passion is to build businesses, right? And the problem is people say, okay, I got to know I'm doomed. I'm done. It's not going to work. And I'm like, dude, just do the right thing. If you try for a whole year, for 2 years, and it's not working, I agree. Or if the company's not giving you what you need, you know. But the problem with people is it's a short-term thing that they feel that a failure, it's definitive. And it's not. I can tell you many, many stories about that. And, I had this rep that wasn't PIP many years ago. That was my HP time. So it's been a moon. And I told him, you have potential to be the top rep in the company. You just got to believe that. I can't do anything with this customer. I said, this customer has a potential to buy from you $100 million. Oh, it's not right. Do you want me to prove you wrong? I said, yes. I said, okay. I'm going to change the rep and I'm going to prove to you that's going to do. Or you can do it and I'll coach you through it. I'll give you 6 weeks to do that. And you're going to meet with me every week. Do you want to do that? Yes. But are you committed to it? Yes. So we got together every Friday, and unpurposely, I did Friday 4 to 5 p.m. every Friday on camera, right? On purpose. And he's like, what you did about this week? Oh, yeah, I tried to call this guy. I tried to say, no. You know where their office is? Yes. Go sit down in the lobby. There's a coffee shop down in the lobby. Go sit down over there. And you work from there from Monday to Friday, every day. You can expense your coffee. From 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day, you're going to work from there. But what? Meet everyone, from the janitor to the coffee maker, and see what they like, what they do, what they talk about. Get to know everyone. And then we talk Friday. So we did. He came back. I said, dude, no, I met this guy that when I was replying to my email. I'm like, I know. I have a meeting next week. Yes. And then he came back to me and he said, what you going to talk to him about? Oh, we're going to show him. I said, no. No. Call him and say, I just want to talk to you about what's the best way for us to use our time next week. What do you want to see? Ask the question. So on, so on. I don't want to spend too much time on this, right? After 6 weeks, he had a $27 million project in his hand. 6 months later, he closed it. 22 million, something like that. From a PIP to a $22 million project, number one rep in the territory. The reason is people don't take the time. They take the first no and failure and just leave by the failure, right? Don't take the failure. Go around. Do things outside of the box. Email, LinkedIn, it doesn't work. I've been telling everyone that, like, it doesn't work. You got to call. Go to events. Oh, this event is for nothing. Doesn't matter. You're going to find someone that you're going to sell to. Find partners. I remember when I was a rep a long time ago, I blew outside of the water, my territory over and over and over again because I relied on my partners. And my partners brought me because they loved me. And they brought me so much business that I made 300% consistently of my quota. And my quota keep increasing. I keep making my quota. And everybody said, what's your thing? I said, well, I love my partners. They love me. And then instead of having Paulo selling, now I have 37 sellers on my partners loving me, and they bring me business. Those are my route to market. I found it. So that's the way. Thinking outside the box is important for that. So don't take the failure. It's my biggest challenge, people to realizing this and act upon it. It's easy to go to the negative route. Don't go. If you're a rep and you're listening, or a BDR, you're listening, anybody's listening, is don't go to the negative side because it will eat you up and then you're not going to be successful. You're fail. But if you say, fuck, I get to know. Sorry. I got to know, right? How do I get to the West? The yes. And don't say, I want to talk to the CIO. The CIO does not make projects. They approve projects. The same way I told the AE is the most important person in the room, the middle management is the most important person for us to make projects. CIO, VPs, they all are supporters. They are approvers. They are budget movers. It's important to have that relationship, but they're not going to bring you a project. You can golf with them every day. They're not going to tell you, you know what, I have a project for you. No, because they don't know. You're the business guy. The middle management, it's where the project starts, the pain relies, and they talk more, right? They're more open to ideas and change. Make sense, Lee?
It makes perfect sense. What really caught my imagination, actually, as you were talking through it, was, if I am hearing it correctly, you're approaching this actually in terms of when you start that project, you're kind of starting with the end user, right, of the solution, and you are building that. Forgive me, I'll use my own language, but like you're building that business case with that end user, and then bringing in kind of more senior stakeholders towards the end of the sales process when you've already built it out, you've already shown, this is the outcome that we're going to deliver. And so when you're bringing in, the CIO, the CRO, whoever it may be, it's then a case of, this is how we are going to work together. Have I interpreted that correctly?
Of course. And then guess what? $20 million is cheap or it's expensive. It depends. What does it solve? You know what I mean? $20 million could be cheap when it's solving for a $150 million problem, right? Or it can be way expensive if your outcome is a $10 million saving. It's double, so it doesn't make sense. Who knows that? Is the CIO? No. He doesn't know that. He doesn't know it's a 10 or 20 or $100 million problem. He probably knows the figures, but he doesn't know the how. He knows the why. The why is because it's not working. So build the why, how, what, before it gets to the point where you need to be approved. Because $20 million could be expensive or could be cheap, depending on what you're sold. That's the reason I tell you about the outcome selling, not value. $20 million could be a great value to the company. Depends. But if you are achieving this outcome that has this problem with this solution, then it could be cheap. And the project is approved like this because there's no arguing about, and it's based on inputs from their person's team, the reality of the customer. It's not about this report from Gartner that shows 30% reduction, blah, blah, blah. No, in your company, this area has this problem that can be solved with this, and the outcome is that. How he's going to argue with cheap or not, or expensive? He can't, or she can't, right? But if you come up, according to Gartner, this is a 3x return, the guy is going to say, oh, you don't know my company. You know what I mean? It's a different story. So that's the reason for me, the V2 of the value selling is what I call the outcome selling. Focus on the outcome selling. What's in there for me? Not about the general outcome, but what's in there for that company. That's the reason I'm telling you, high performers, they need to know the customer. Remember I told you this. They need to know the customer. It's not somebody else. It's the customer, right? That's the most important. That's what makes $1 million deals. People think $1 million deals are this unicorn things. No, of course not. You just got to find a pain big enough to worth $100 million or $10 million or $5 million. Find that pain and you're going to sell multiple $1 million deals, right? But you got to find the pain, attach that to your outcomes that you can provide with, then you have a sale. Forget about anything else.
I love it. And Paulo, really a perfect way of actually kind of rounding the loop on what we first started talking about. So let's wrap up there. And because I think you've actually summarized it beautifully. For folks that are listening, Paulo, and were about as captivated as I have been for about the last 45 minutes, if they've got any questions about outcome selling or anything else that they've heard, where can they find you and where can they connect?
Just come on LinkedIn, right? So, send me a message on LinkedIn. I will definitely try to reply as best as I can. And of course, if you need anything from Digibee, I'm here as well. But I'm very approachable and open, right? I love to discuss ideas and I'm passionate about people. So Paulo Veloso on LinkedIn, and I will try my best to reply in a reasonable time.
I'll put a link down to that in the show notes below. Paulo, thank you so much again for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Have a good day.